Good evening and welcome to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. My name is Andy and I work as operations manager here at the IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway. We are very happy to have you with us tonight, both online on YouTube Live and with our live studio audience. And remember that IKYA Live is a news program a bit out of the ordinary for two reasons. Number one, it's a discussion, not just a report. So really, IKYA Live hinges on you bringing your questions and your perspective to this spiritual discussion of the world's news. And then the second part is exactly that spiritual aspect of IKYA Live, because spiritual teacher and enlightened master IKYA takes a news topic of the day and lifts it to a higher perspective to assist us in seeing a bigger picture around that topic. And tonight's topic is a doozy. Our health and healthcare and the systems around it. It's a huge topic. It's wide-ranging and it's very complex. So that's one of the reasons we want to dive into it tonight, and probably we'll need to do several episodes over the coming year, because it really is, of course, it's very personal to each of us, but it's also, there's so many different layers and aspects of it. What we're going to focus on tonight is that since World War II, the systems that we have been built around, especially our physical health, but also really mental health since the 50s and 60s, have become increasingly complex, making health care feel impersonal, detached, overwhelming. In the United States, for example, healthcare can easily bankrupt people and is actually the most common reason that people go bankrupt. And then add on that, we've kind of given away our health and given it to corporations, to governments, to hospitals. So we've got a lot to cover tonight. We really want to go into how health also connects with our spiritual journey and why it's so important for us to have an active part in our own health. So let's get started by asking IKYA, could you give us a little bit of context for where we find ourselves in this sort of weird world of healthcare today?
Well, health is a big business, but it's not really about making you healthy. It's about making you sick. That's where the money is. And remember that what is so difficult for people to relate to, we'll kind of just begin today diving into that, is that the companies making the products that make you sick are also the same companies that provide the cure. A lot of these industries are owned by the same mother companies. So it's a whole industry and it's so big. And since especially the Second World War, one has introduced tens of thousands of new chemicals and additives and all of that. And at the same time, in the medical industry, they invent new illnesses all the time, new diagnoses, new medications. Sometimes it happens that they first develop a medication, then they find the diagnosis for it. It's money. So the whole kind of like game we're trapped in right now is that first you have half of the industry doing everything it can to make us sick. Not kill us, but make us sick. And then we have the other part trying to sell health and medication and treatments. Again, often the same company. There's one interesting example that was discovered a few years ago. It was a guy, a researcher, and he looked into hair products. And he found that a lot of hair products contain chemicals that will make your hair fall out, or that you will lose your gloss. You will have a lot of problems. And lo and behold, of course, they also sell the treatments, right? So often, as you see on social media, people find, oh, if I just use kind of natural stuff, my hair looks better. Often when we buy hair products, the result will be poor quality. So then we will need to buy all these other things. And that's how the industries work. Remember that for the big corporations of the world, they don't have your best interest in mind. You're a cash cow, right? It's simply a matter of keeping you miserable and desperate and sick and hungry. And just like when people eat a lot of unhealthy foods, they get more hungry, so they buy even more food that is very unhealthy for them, and then they will need medical treatment. It's just this endless machine that we're all part of, and there is no way out. Or is there? That's what we'll find out. But first, it's important that you understand that this is a huge machine. Health, in different ways, is the most important product in the world. It's not just physical health, it's also mental health. Remember that most of the times when you buy stuff, it's because you don't feel well. It's because you're not happy. Right? A happy person will consume less. Happiness is the enemy of corporations, but they try to sell it. First, they do everything they can to make you miserable, and then they sell you products to self-medicate. A happy, balanced person will consume very little. So this whole, industrial complex of misery is controlling everything, and this is not conspiracy theories. Like, there are a few big companies in the world that control everything, right? And even, for instance, when it comes to certain chemicals that, and they also control the people and organizations that will say, well, this is within the limit. They control those too. So, but even when you have, a non-harmful chemical in a low level, and it's combined with other ones to get that cocktail effect, and they're completely aware of it. But it's very difficult to do anything about. And we have tens of thousands of chemicals, and they all do a little bit, enough to make us all sick, enough to make us all miserable, emotionally unstable, more aggressive, more needy, that we disconnect from people, that we're less able to deal with our own emotions and our own, life journey, take less responsibility. And then we have endless products, endless consumption, both food and, beauty products, clothes, whatever it is. We consume and we consume it. It's the same machine. It's the same other companies, right? So we need to understand that this is the world we live in. And it's never discussed because, of course, they also own the media. It's just how it is. But it's not a conspiracy thing. It's basically, humans aren't better than this, right? Human life is still about survival. And when it's about survival, it's about dominance. It's about exploitation. It's about taking whatever you can. Throughout evolution, life has been tough. So you're supposed to stuff yourself whenever you find something to eat. When you get something good, you're supposed to take as much as you can. When you compete with your neighboring tribe, it's allowed to kill them and steal all their stuff. We have an on button. We don't have an off button. So we can never be satisfied. We can be satisfied for 5 minutes, but then that becomes the norm. That's the new floor, right? So the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next one immediately. We don't stop. We're not genetically equipped to stop. So as some companies are successful and they keep going and then buy other companies, they don't stop because people don't stop. Right? It's not that they're evil, it's simply that it's human nature to behave this way, and humans are not smart enough to stop them, because if people did not consume, they would stop. But it requires that we actually connect with ourselves and do the job, right? And we don't want to do that because it's easier to eat candy and watch shit on TV. So we're trapped, and we have trapped ourselves. And we turn these big corporations into gods. And this is an important part of how we got here. because the face of these big corporations and brands, they trigger the genetic structure we have that is very religious. So today, corporations are also deities. We relate to the face of a corporation as the face of God. A brand is a being, right? We relate to a company as a person, and we want to be their best friend if they're powerful. We all want to be on the winning team. So once you invest yourself in a brand, child labor, no, it will explain that away. Because it's your brand, you identify with it. It's how you express your uniqueness. And this is also part of the big illusion, right? We think that we have choice, so we think that we are in power. You have the choice between endless shit. But you really don't have a choice because you're in this and you're being manipulated all the time, and you let yourself be manipulated because it's in your genetics programming. So you can't stop. And there are a few companies who own the whole thing. But remember that we still live in the Stone Ages. I always come back to that. We have a tribal brain. Our psychology can always be explained from how we used to live in small tribes, because that's been most of evolution. So when someone is on top, this can be a corporation, we want to believe that they have our best interest in mind. Just like, if you have a leader of a tribe and you depend on that person to survive, you want to believe that that person can save you. And you want to satisfy that leader, right? So when people, for instance, buy a brand, they're worshiping a god. And they get the satisfaction. Look at me, I'm loyal to you, which means now I'm carrying this energy. I represent you. So when you look at brands and people who buy a lot of brand clothes and whatnot, it's clergy, right? It's just like the Roman Catholic Church with their, ropes and funny hats. It's that. You dress in a way that makes you feel like you're part of something greater than yourself. So you don't want to know, and you want to believe that when I'm wearing this, I'm better because I'm closer to the top. We are deeply religious people, and we can't stop. And the more confused we are, the more miserable we are, the more we feel that I have to climb. I have to climb the hierarchy. I need to basically be kind of safe. I need to make sure that I will be taken care of. So we want to buy the right things. We want to eat the right things. We want to do all of that. And doing what we're told. In a tribe, the best way to survive is by doing what you're told. And when you're on a team, part of being on a team is doing what you're told. If you want to prove yourself that I'm worthy, you will do what you're told. So when a corporation tells you do this, you feel better when you do. Right? And we all have it in us. So we're gullible, we're vulnerable, and most people can't stop. So we've kind of collectively, as civilization, let this happen, and nobody knows how to stop it. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. Because, of course, you are simply a production unit. So the whole strategy is to keep you alive, but barely. You need to be miserable, you need to be desperate, and you need to accept it. Because that means that you will be seeking approval by buying more things, by complying to whatever the corporations are telling you. And the corporation today, they of course, they control politics. Just like in the States, they have their people. And, when you look at the pharmaceutical industries, there are more lobbyists than there are politicians. The pharmaceutical industry spends several times more money on lobbying than developing medicines. You know, for most people, that's shocking, but that's the reality we live in. So no, they don't need a lot of profit to develop new medication. That's a side gig. It's power. It's lobbying. It's the big machine of making money. Because they're human, right? But today's system is showing us how deeply primitive we still are and how aggressive we are. So it's that. So by keeping you miserable, and also through additives and chemicals and shitty foods and all that, and we know through studies what it does, right? Ultra-processed foods will cause depression, anxiety. It can also push people over the edge if you have mental illness. And they're pushing it like crazy because, you know, it's wonderful. You will need medical attention. You will buy more shit. Right? And you are trapped in this too. And understand, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is all out in the open. It's just people don't want to know, and we don't want to deal with it because it means we have to take responsibility then. And that's the number one thing that people don't want. Responsibility. We want to have opinions. We want to complain when we don't get what we want, but we don't want responsibility. Complaining is placing responsibility on someone else, right? So we love that. So then nothing happens. So we will also, you know, start looking at the strategies of how we can set ourselves free from this. But first, a question.
Actually, I just wanted to share that in preparation for this episode, I did a little research, and one of the things that I find most fascinating and just crazy about this is that we, if you think of like middle class Europeans, Americans, across the industrialized world, most of us own some level of stock or investments or something like that. And we are all complicit in, because our investments own the companies that make the poisonous food and, you know, cosmetics and all of that. We also own stock in the companies that make the medications. We also own stock in the agricultural companies that poison the land and drain the minerals and all of this kind of stuff. And I was trying to like see if I could pin down more, like, who can we blame, this kind of, you know, because we talk about the corporations, but the irony is that we kind of all own these corporations and we're invested on all sides of it. So we as both the consumers, as workers, all that, it's just, as you said, we are completely integrated with the system. I just wanted to share that sort of added level of crazy.
Now, when we look at, you know, the path forward, it's even more ridiculous because now, you know, with the development of AI and wearables and all of that, over the next few decades, everything that goes on inside of you will be monitored. And forget like having a chip on your head. This will be a lot more sophisticated. Your every thought, your every emotion, your every kind of chemical process will be monitored. And in hospitals already, they're using AI to produce the right diagnosis because that proves to be better than doctors, right? So what will happen is our devices will be monitoring everything and it will be interpreted with accuracy. And then one can have, of course, both preventive, medical strategies, and you may be told that this is good for you, you should not be eating this, you should be doing that, right? But every possible data about you will be collected and used. And then, if you don't comply, that will have consequences. For instance, what if the system says that, well, you're a bit low now, you obviously have a depression, you should be on medication. And you say, no, thank you very much. You may be considered a risk, a hazard. You may lose your job. There may be certain professions that you're not allowed to have. You may encounter travel restrictions, right? That you're not allowed to go certain places. This will happen. So with the development of AI, you will lose autonomy. And then it's up to, authorities to decide what's good for you. And if you don't, well, why wouldn't you do that? It's best for everyone, right? And you will be considered a risk. This is coming. So if you think the whole pandemic thing with, vaccines, all that was government overreach, just wait. This will be so fully integrated into everything that when you have a thought, the government will know, the corporations will know, and they will know what products you need, right? And think also, I talked a while ago with someone in the pharmaceutical industry because he works in anti-aging and developing medication for, making people live longer. And he was quite aware and open about the fact that, this is simply about making people live longer so they can consume more. Because when people live longer, they need more medical attention, right? They are patients that never get well. So we keep them alive so we can maximize profit, because as you get older, you need more medication. So it's just a business strategy. It's not about you living a happy life. It's back to the cash cow thing, right? We need to learn how to navigate this and use this to our advantage. But, back to how AI will change everything. There are benefits to it, obviously, that you can monitor your own health and one can detect things before they really become dangerous, right? So that will become a whole industry. But one can also turn that around and monitor, how one can keep you miserable, right? You would think that it would be about making you better, but when we know that the whole machine is about keeping you miserable so you consume more, and that you are kind of disconnecting the way you think, so that you will become more stupid and passive and less interested in systemic change. One can also detect that. There are many interesting aspects to the use of AI, but when we look at human history, once people have the opportunity to dominate other people, they do not say no thank you. They grab it with both hands and they just go for it. So what we've been seeing in China with the social credit system, if you're not aware of it, it's a system basically in the reverse of what we have here. Instead of punishing people, you get rewarded for the type of behavior that the system wants. And people want to be included. They want to be a good person. So once you have a system that will give you points for doing what the government wants you to do, people comply. And it's in many ways better than what we have in our system, where it's arbitrary. Like, you can break the law, you can be a criminal, and you will only get punished if you get caught. So it's not fair, and if you get caught, then you're punished. Punishment is, in a way, very, very old-fashioned, because wouldn't it be better to stimulate positive behavior? right? So the system in theory is better, but it relies on governments that actually want you to be a happy person. But of course, it's also about submission. But we will have the social credit system here too. It will be the new kind of legal system. It will be a few decades, but gradually it will be introduced because people need to be controlled. I've talked about this a lot, that the more laws we have, the more people stop thinking and taking responsibility, because a lot of the laws we have make no sense, right? A lot of the regulations just, okay, there's a rule here, and we all break the law several times a day, right? So we do not take responsibility and we don't think anymore because we don't have to. It's simply about following a law or doing what we're told. And then we relax and we become more stupid. We take less responsibility, which also means that we're easier to influence and to manipulate, because when we take responsibility, we think, we apply critical thinking, we make our own decisions. Now it's just like, you know, what lipstick to buy based on TikTok videos, right? It's not choice, it's not critical thinking. And you think, ooh, I'm thinking critically because that influencer said that is good, and this, you know, we're just stupid. And we're at this very strange point in history where we've left everything to the stupid people. In all arenas, it's the stupid people. Because often when you are less intelligent, you also have very little empathy. So you can be very sharp when it comes to the will to dominate, because you cannot dominate by being smart. So you can dominate by being manipulative, aggressive, being a sociopath, right? So we're seeing those people taking over because we just want to be controlled. We want to be dominated. So basically, the more laws we have, the more passive we become, and the less we think, and then we need even more laws. So we've also come to a point in human history where there is no way that we're not going to have a complete dictatorship. And it might sound dystopian, but it's the result of people not wanting to think. They don't want to take responsibility. They just want their buttons to fucking work. And that's all. And they don't care about anything else. Because now we have groomed people into not truly caring about anything but themselves. They don't believe in anything greater than their own feelings. They're not part of some great project outside of themselves, which is important for a human being to have a backbone. Ethics are really about how you relate to the world. Once all you think of is your feelings and how you're being satisfied, there is no ethics. So this is where we're, and then we need to be controlled, because then we're just disconnected individuals. And to make everyone behave as a collective, as a society, we will need an enormous amount of rules and regulation, and people will need to be told what to do because they're not thinking anymore. So we've come to that tipping point where there's no way it's not going to happen. I'll just make another point before we go to questions. We are in the beginning of what is, I often refer to as the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was from around 1685 to 1815. So that was about 150 years, okay? That was basically an age where information, science became available, and people learned how to think and relate to the world outside religion, where humans started to discover things, and also in a more principled way. So one had a lot of major scientific breakthroughs, and it changed how one saw the world. And as a result of that, one then had the Industrial Revolution, because one was able to take steps away from the church as the giver of truth and all of that. And So that was the age of enlightenment. But humans are humans, and we can't deal with this. So enlightenment was humans having access to information that was not biased, right? Because in religion, it's about being told what truth is and not really investigating. Is it so? The new way was evidence, critical thinking, philosophy, all of that. And now, when humans have access to unlimited information, what do? We choose religion again through conspiracy theories and bullshit, and by becoming more stupid. People are now more interested in their own opinions than reality and truth. It's just about how they feel. But historically, we're in a cycle that is now the beginning of the endarkenment. This century will be very dark. It's like going back to the Middle Ages. And it's very strange. This is a century where we will have a lot of breakthroughs, but it will also be extremely dark. This is also why we're talking about this, because you, as a spiritual seeker, you need to understand how to navigate this. So we're going into an age that will look quite dark, where it's about power and manipulation and greed and destruction, but it's also the culmination of our civilization, the way it has operated until now. And as I've talked about before, the dark night of soul, that darkness is really about learning and realizing what is it that we've learned. When the light is taken away, you have to be the light yourself. So it's up to what have you learned? What are you vibrating? What truth are you operating on? And you have to use that. That is what darkness is about. So now, when our civilization will gradually collapse and reinvent itself, we have to let go of a lot of the old ways because they're not sustainable and they're based on extremely primitive behaviors and ways of being. And we cannot go on. But for us to come to that place, it has to become extreme first. So this is what we're seeing, that everything is becoming very extreme until it kind of breaks, and then we have to reinvent. Because then we have to look at what have we learned, what is actually important, what carries truth. We need to be able to make an extract over the last several hundred years. So, okay, this is something we can build upon. So we'll get there, but do not be fooled. This century will gradually get darker. And the only light to be found is within. And that's why we're talking about this. It's the only solution. You will not find the light in the world. You have to find it in yourself. And it's just a fact. And as we move forward through the century, if you're still on this planet, you will see it very clearly. And then it will be fun. Because the more you activate the light within, well, there's light. But for a lot of people, this will be a complete shit show. And we're just in the very beginning of it. And it's how the corporations have turned this civilization into a farm, where you were being farmed, right? It's keeping you desperate and hungry, so you're willing to work too much, sacrifice too much, get just enough to get by. Now they're experimenting with how little can you get and not die? How little can we give people and yet keep civilization going? They're getting better at it. And normal people are losing. So the endarkenment will last until, I see, the first part of next century, and then it will start turning around, and then fun will happen. So, you should incarnate then instead. So, welcome back. We have questions? Yeah.
It was more a question about, because one of my great frustrations personally in this space is none of this is happening by nefarious, evil doers in the background or, mysterious forces. It's people. We're doing it to ourselves. People work in corporations. People work in government. People, we're doing this to ourselves. One of my great frustrations is like, why the heck can't we just choose something different?
Because we're not able to behave beyond our own level of consciousness and our own level of evolution. Humans are trained monkeys, and that's it, right? We are still, as a life form, quite primitive. And we see that the moment people have the opportunity, you can see the ape. It doesn't take much, right? It really does not take much. Civilization is a very thin veneer. But underneath, you have tribal apes. And this is a century where that will become clear to us. And I think if you look around the world, you will see it already, right? And it's not that we're becoming that. We've always been that way. But when we're less confronted, when things work, when things go our way, we're pleasant monkeys, right? So less conflict doesn't mean that we have less conflict within. But now that this civilization is slowly crumbling and the ugliness of what we're actually doing as civilization is starting to be visible, it's just humans are not better than this yet. But you can be. And we'll start getting into that soon, yes?
Yes. So we had a comment online that, and this is a great moment for it, because she had an experience in the family just about last few days where medication was necessary. So in one way, she's really grateful for the progress that we've made. And if this had happened 100 years ago, the incident would have been much more serious, maybe death. And it is also important to reflect on how far we've come, even though we are these monkeys under the veneer.
Yes, absolutely. We've made a lot of progress. And this is what makes it so difficult for humans, is that, of course, this is the only way humans know how to have progress, right? It's through the system. Today it's called capitalism, right? That you need economic incentives, you need greed. If you don't have greed, you will have no innovation. And it's just how it is. So of course we have a lot of great stuff. But when you look at the machine, and on this level, when you have corporations that basically are selling to every single human on the planet, and they sell several products to each individual in the world every day. They're that big through thousands of companies that they own. It's different, right? They can experiment with, let's do a little bit of that. For instance, when it comes to hair products, just that as an example, if you add a very small chemical to shampoo, and then 200 million people are experiencing that, they're having a problem with it, it's still spread out. But it means that 200 million people will then buy other products. It's like that. It's very subtle. But because it's so, it's at this point part of the fabric, right? And it's, of course, smart, because it's always about margins. It's always about these little tweaks here and there. So this is the whole science. But we also need to be aware that today we have let the corporations take over. They control politics, they control media, they control products, they control everything. They control what we think. what you eat and what you do to yourself and the chemicals and all of that will affect you emotionally, mentally, and it will make you less of a stable person, meaning that you will need more. And yes, people died of illnesses in the old days, sure. And modern medicine can help people. That's great. But we need to also to take a step back and look at the machine, right? Understand that there is no interest in making people healthy. It's simply about relieving symptoms, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with it. We just need to be realistic about it. This is what our civilization is about at this point. It's next century that it will change, yes.
Yes. So as we move toward like what we can do, we have a question that, given this slightly dystopian future you're describing, why do we at the same time have such a strong alternative medicine, detox, biohacking movement at the moment? And she asks specifically, will this knowledge from sort of, Chinese medicine, naturopathy, all these different branches, will that knowledge start to fade away and die, or will the motivation to be healthy kick in again? Yeah, she's kind of curious about that.
It's actually interesting to say it's a strong movement. It's not. It's a very thin niche. You must be watching too much social media, because in the real world, it's gone. So it's not a big movement. It's for those who are interested in these things, right? But today, if you're interested, often you go all in. So that's the difference. It's fewer people, but they're more enthusiastic. So when you look at the whole kind of natural remedy, natural medicine thing, it's diminishing. And it's also by law, because, of course, pharmaceutical companies, they want control. Because they don't want natural medicine, because people can actually get well. And that's bad for business. So it's important that they, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have now bought a lot of the supplement companies and all that. So they basically can control it. And you can see that around the world, you have so many, supplement companies, and it's all pharmaceutical companies behind them. So when it comes to more natural treatments and approaches, that's slowly dying by law. Because, of course, through lobbying, one can make rules and makes it impossible for natural medicine to survive. For instance, that you need a certain amount of research and trials and this or that, meaning that you will need the machinery of a pharmaceutical company. And of course, if you're into natural medicine, you don't have access to that. So, so this is happening. But there are different ways. They cannot, at least now, stop people from using spiritual light, healing, different practices that, they can't stop that. But there are many different types of like herbal medicine, flower remedies, homeopathy and all that. It's on its way out, because there are more and more restrictions. So yes, then we move on to food and figuring out how can we use food and different strategies to build a better health. If you are into supplements, in the world of psychiatry, you can actually get a diagnosis. It's considered unhealthy, that you have a fixation on health. So if you go to a health food store and buy supplements, in theory, that qualifies you to get a diagnosis. Like, we are there, right? It's just how it is. So it is a small niche. But this is also why it's important that we talk with each other and spread information, right? This is part of this project right here. Have a conversation with people. Try to make them realize what's going on and offer them alternatives. working with your diet is definitely one of the best strategies. So we'll get back to that in a moment. Yes?
Yeah, we have a fascinating question actually, because you've talked a lot in the past about how one reason conspiracy theories are almost never true is that first of all, we're not that smart, we're not that good at planning things, especially on a big scale. But this whole like healthcare machine or health machine or sickness machine has been built over decades. How the hell did we coordinate this, and how is it becoming increasingly complex and coordinated if we're actually that dumb and can't do that?
Right. Isn't that interesting? As I said, like conspiracy theories, they look real because it looks coordinated, but it's natural human behavior. So, for instance, what I've said, like these guys, on top, they don't need to sit down and have meetings. They went to the same schools. They come from the same level of families. They have the same way of thinking. They have the same interest. They're like all of that. So they behave the same way. And then it looks like they had a meeting, right? Natural human behavior is this. It's just that once it becomes really big and systemic, you can see the finer details of genetic disposition when it comes to our greed and the need to dominate and to work through hierarchies and all of that. What happens, for instance, that's really interesting, it happens to every single person. Of course, there are exceptions, but in general, once a person finds himself in a position of power, after a couple of weeks, he will start believing that I know better than other people. I'm smarter. I should make decisions for that person because I know better. Right? This is epigenetics. We have it in us to climb the ladder of whatever hierarchy we're in because we are deeply hierarchical people, meaning that we can recognize which kind of level we're on and what it requires. Because once we reach a certain level, we're supposed to dominate and tell other people what to do. And if they don't, we want to punish them because we understand what's best. And then we get this pathological need to force people to do what we want them to because we say, well, that's my job now. Right? It's in human nature. So this has been built not based on any plan whatsoever, but because humans are humans. And when you have a company and it grows, they will have more humans, right? And the people who are just better at it, they get results, they will gravitate towards the top, and it will keep growing. But there's no plan behind it. The thing is that humans cannot disguise their true self, their true behavior. In every situation where humans are pushed, they will show themselves, right? And it's always the same thing. This is a survival game. So all humans are equipped with the same kind of switches, the same need for hierarchical performance and dominance, given the opportunity. So this is how it has happened. It's not conspiracy. Yes, humans are not smart enough. Look at any government trying to do anything, right? And that's your proof right there, because that is really conspiracy. It's like people coming together, trying to plan something and then execute it on a mass scale, right? Look at what governments are doing. And they're even the best one doing it. They have it as a job, they have an interest, right? You're a bureaucrat, you're a politician, you want to do these things. And yet, have anyone ever seen a government, effort that has gone well? Right? It's not efficient, it's not productive, it's often costly, inefficient, and stupid. Right? And so when we sit down and try to construct these things, they don't work. When we just do whatever we do as humans, and we're driven by our instincts and greed and power and all of that, this is what we get, right? So this is why we never, it's never the conspiracy theories. It's like, this is what people are like. And we are so predictable as humans that any human put in the same position will behave similarly. So it seems like everybody's been, discussing things at meetings. They haven't. Humans are that predictable, unfortunately.
So then to the question, like that would indicate that, people on boards, corporate boards, leaders in government, or like the families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, none of those people are essentially any different than any of the rest of us.
Exactly. It's just opportunity and place and space and all of that. It just comes with where you are. It's just like, for instance, when you see someone, they used to be poor and then they got rich. And then, again, after a few years, they behave differently. They think differently. They have a different philosophy now. They think that, again, as one said, everyone should follow their passion, and as someone said, I don't remember who, like, anyone who says that is already a billionaire. Normal people can't do that. But it's like you change because, like, you see what you're doing as normal and just, and because you have more money, you're obviously better because this is, like, we're all like this. So it's sad that we're not better, but it's just how it is. We're so predictable. So it's, yes, any human placed in the same space, same circumstances, same opportunity will start behaving the exact same way, with few exceptions. And they're not normally very successful. They will fall out because they're not part of the tribe. So there are codes. Just like, when you go to a country, there are ways of behavior that is acceptable, and it's the same thing. Once you start rising, there is a kind of global culture of the elites, and you want to be accepted. So you start behaving like, it's just that. It's just humans. It's no conspiracies, no meanings, no nothing. It's just human psychology and, our primitive ape brains.
So, I got a great question, a little bit complex. In 1958, Hugh Everett wrote his doctorate thesis on multiverse theory, and now we know more, and definitively there is absolutely more than one universe. So, the question is, which universe of horror were you talking about earlier tonight with the mind control and the artificial intelligence? How is that supposed to work? And we're not helpless against all of this, right? According to Heisenberg's uncertainty theory, the observer determines the outcome. So no one is helpless in this scenario. Is that right?
No, it's not right. That you observe does not mean that you will necessarily change it. You can also reinforce it. That's what most people are doing. So by observing something, they are actually remanifesting and reinforcing. It depends on consciousness. Now, the example, for instance, because this is also about who's responsible. For instance, there's this example of saying, okay, if someone put cocaine on the table, and then you took that cocaine, is that your responsibility or is it the person putting it on the table? And my answer is it depends on your level of consciousness. Because when you are in a low level consciousness, we call that the horizontal, it's the biological consciousness in the brain. That is the personality, it's the self, all of that. It's a series of biological processes determined by genetics and DNA. And then you have, on top of that, you've been kind of groomed and shaped by your family, the people around you, and society in general. So you have a set of behaviors that you know are what you're supposed to do. Now, if you are in a low level of consciousness and you grow up in an environment where people take drugs, let's say that even your parents took drugs, right? They take cocaine. It's what you do, and you don't even think about it because it's what you do. So when you're in the biological consciousness, you really don't have free will. Because there is nothing outside of your reactions and your instincts and you wanting to belong and fit. And so you're supposed to repeat the behaviors of your parents and people around you. That's how you learn how to survive. And with that will also come your sense of ethics, your sense of, what's acceptable, what is not, what the rules are, and you will just do that. So, your ability to then influence also your observation means that you need to be able to analyze what you're observing. And then based on what you're vibrating, you can influence it. This is also well established. So when you are in a passive state, by observing it, you will be reinforcing it because you will be the sounding board of what is being observed. You're not active. And by being the sounding board, you're mirroring that and therefore reinforcing the manifestation. Now, when you begin growing into a spiritual consciousness, which is what we refer to as the vertical consciousness, that is the type of consciousness that is incarnating into a life form or a form. And this consciousness is more universal. It is part of the universe, and it means that you, as that, incarnate into many different forms as part of your unfoldment. So that is a different type of consciousness altogether, and as that begins to wake up, this is what we call, spiritual awakening. Then you have the opportunity to go beyond your biological consciousness, because then you have something inside of you guiding you. You start to connect to something that I am something beyond my body. I'm something beyond the self and the brain. And when that happens, you have responsibility, because then you have a choice. When you are in the biological consciousness, you really don't have a choice. You will just do whatever you're programmed to do. And we can talk about, we have free will. It's a great idea, but in reality, no. Then the world will look very different. So it's a matter of spiritual awakening. So when we begin to wake up spiritually, gradually we go from biological dominance in the active consciousness to a vertical one, which operates outside and in a way free from the biological programmings. And then you are also able to apply critical thinking. You can see what's going on, and then you can make a different choice. Which also means that when you observe something, it will pass through you, and by that, you will vibrate a different answer. So basically means that first you have the manifestation being observed, and the observation will change the echo because you are an active part. You bring something in through your vertical consciousness, and that will then be the echo of that kind of object. And through that echo, it carries information and vibration, and then changing that very object. So it takes consciousness, it takes spiritual awakening to be able to fully, number one, make choices and also influence manifestations. Most humans are not there yet. So the endarkenment is something that has been predicted for a long time based on cycles. One can see it. Once you understand how kind of cycles and waves work, it's very easy to see what will happen when. But this wave that we're in now, it will intensify because we need to reinvent, right? And that's the good part of it. It's not dystopian. It's basically realizing that we've outgrown this form. We've outgrown this structure and this kind of matrix of our civilization, and we need to do better. And then things need to be, we need to shake the tree, make everybody doubt everything, so they're forced to go within. Because when people can't trust the outer world, they will have to go within. Not everyone, but there will be enough that will go within and then connect with kind of the extract of human history so far, and then one will really be able to bring this civilization on a path that will make everything a lot more fun and more balanced. So that will happen. It will just be a very kind of rough phase until then.
Okay, we've got a question in the audience.
I'll try again. Forgive me my English and my stupidity. Yes, because I'm listening to you and working with, and this is kind of too big for me. And because of that, I have tried to take it in to me, and I understand so much that my mind and my body is one part. And that I am a part, I am a one, what call it? One functioning, one energy part in a bigger. I understand that I'm me and that I belongs to everyone, are together with everyone. And in this, I have tried to take this down to me and to try to let my body and my mind, I'm going through a really hard physical suck. And it's better and better. And I know that what's happening here. It's and all is together with my process. And I know, I understand that I have to listen to me with you back there. And you are really important in this. But I have to find that this is. I have to find what I am doing. Step by step myself. Yes. And that's very hard.
Yes, but that is exactly the point. It has to come from within.
Yes.
Right? Because now we've been talking about what's happening on the planet and why people are seemingly better and also worse. Mm-hmm. Right? I've said that objectively, humans have never had it better than right now. Subjectively, humans have never been worse. Right? And it's because of this. We have created a machine that only wants to exploit. And we're the ones being exploited, and nature's being exploited, all of that. And we need a new starting point. And you're absolutely right. It has to come from within, because that is the solution. Right? And what is interesting also with where we are at, because there will be discussions around this, is do you actually have the right to your own body? Do you own it? Right? And that is kind of what we need to figure out.
How can you understand it?
Yes, I will explain that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, now, let's start with kind of the concept of liberty, because this is important to understand the balance, because liberty is you having the autonomy and self-determination to be able to make both kind of free and smart decisions, like for yourself and in society. And that ends when it infringes on other people's liberties. And that will happen all the time, because you will act from you and your subjective wants and needs and your understanding, so will other people, and they have a very different understanding. In theory, this is why we need government. This is why we need laws to balance this. And it used to be that way. Now it's simply out of control because we don't think anymore. But the liberty thing is really interesting, because the question is, do you own your body? And this is, you know, the more philosophical side to why many people were against the vaccinations during the pandemic, for instance. It was not really just about vaccines, it was the overreach, right? The feeling that I need to control my own body. And I understand it also, it's like when people feel disenfranchised and they can feel this big machine and they're losing, right? And now that machine also wants to stick needles in me, right? It becomes a kind of symbol. So many people, they felt they were against vaccines. They really didn't understand why. Of course, they come up with all sorts of conspiracy theories, but it's really about this. It's about the autonomy. Do I have the right to my own body? Does it belong to the government? Because when you cannot say no, it means it's not yours. Someone else is in control. And this is part of what we need to figure out, like spiritually. We need to understand that actually you don't. One way to understand it is by understanding the principle that you have the right to make your own choices. You don't have the right to make them come true. Because you live in a world that operates on natural laws, society, this or that. Meaning that, sure, that is part of what you incarnated into. You incarnated into a life form with limitations. You can't fly, that's a limitation, right? There are a lot of things you can't do. And also when you incarnate into a society in a certain time, that is part of what you agreed to. You have the right to navigate, you have the right to figure things out and to walk your own way based on what's available, based on the rules and the laws and everything, right? You can't change the world, you can only change yourself. And the world changes when individuals change themselves, because then groups change themselves, and that will have an impact. This is how the world changes. It can never change from the top down. It simply does not. One can enable a new kind of top. It always comes from the bottom. It always, when a new even ruler or dictator comes along, it's based on the collective consciousness and the collective karma and needs of the people. So, understand that when you incarnate, you have agreed to all of this. Right? So that's one important aspect. It's also, everybody's here to work out their karma. And that means that we're here to be ugly. We're here to be confronted. We're here to live out our ugliness and our misunderstandings and our resistance and all of that, and then have life reflect that back to us so we can learn and heal and grow. But we're all doing that. And you know, what many people find confusing sometimes is that when they start the process of awakening, they expect their lives to be calm, you know, more harmony and nice, and the opposite happens, right? Because you activate more. Your curriculum just expanded, and thereby your resistance. You have more homework, more things to do, things blow up in your face. There are so many changes you have to deal with. So it's that. Then often what we want as people is simply, again, we want the buttons to work and then just leave me, right? You live in a society, you live in many different forms of collective consciousness. And they influence you and you influence them. You can't exist on your own. So you are kind of bound by all these kind of spiritual agreements and these kind of organisms that you're a part of. And they also control you. And they have to. Right? It's just, for instance, like when you drive a car, you didn't make it. Right? It comes from a company, right? And to drive a car, you also need traffic regulations and rules and this or that. Otherwise, you can't drive the car. So you get the benefit of driving the car. You have to learn how to drive, you know, that machine. and you have to follow the rules and this or that. But it gives you the benefit of being able to drive and experience that freedom. It's the same way when you incarnate. You didn't make your body, you didn't make society, but you're bound by the limitations and agreements. So spiritually, we need to learn to relax about this part and understand we're all here to work out our karma, and that's messy, that's ugly, that means endless conflict, endless illness, endless, like, all of this. And this is why we incarnate, not just you, but everybody else. And you can see it. So when we go through phases, especially when we're moving into the endarkenment, people will be more confronted with, what have I learned? Who am I really? What is really going on? And people will find different answers, and they will be fighting for the light they see in the world. Don't steal my light, right? Because they get more and more dependent on the outer world, and then life says, no, we're going to dim the light. And then people will be fighting over candles until they're forced to find light within. And hopefully, you've already found it. But it means that you have an endless responsibility to assist people in finding their light. Because over the next even 2 decades, you will see that it will be more difficult for people to find the light outside of themselves. And if they don't know that it exists inside, they will be lost. They will think that they exist in darkness, when they realize that with the inner light, the light is even brighter. But you will also bring it to the world, which means also that your vibration will carry farther. You will be able to have more influence because it's your light. So, because you carry the light and you're kind of vibrating it, life will respond to you as a source. Well, when you relate to the light in the world, you become needy. So in this civilization, we've taught people that your inner light does not exist. There's no pointing, looking inside. You can't connect. There's only illness and imbalance there. And don't try to fix that. Have some medication. So people become completely dependent on the light outside them. And as you see, our light, physical lights, are becoming brighter and brighter when you look at the planet from the outside. Right? We can't see the night sky anymore. We can't see the stars. We only see, the dim light from our own civilization because we don't have the light from the inside. And this is where we're heading, that for this planet to move forward, more people need to find the inner light. So we have to dim the outer light to force that to happen, and it will happen. But anyone in a spiritual kind of process of awakening have a very concrete responsibility to help people find their own light. And this is why I always talk about modern spirituality having to change, because it's just fluff, it's just bullshit. People need to learn what true spiritual work is. And it's the process of truly, truly going within and finding your channel and amplifying that and cleansing and purifying, lifting your consciousness, because that's how the light is not only ignited, it will become clearer and brighter. And a lot of spirituality today, because it's just fluff, it's just people posing. And I've seen so many spiritual teachers and they haven't even found their own inner light yet. So it's just fluff. But if you've found yours, you need to help people ignite. And understanding again that it's unique for each and every one of us. This is why we can't copy. Right? That's why it is awakening. It's what's already within, and we need to learn how to bring it down, and then how to transform the human journey. Right? So we're living from within and bring it into the world as we talked about. And this is the true autonomy. Once the light comes from within, nothing can stop it. It doesn't matter what happens in the outer world, because it doesn't influence you anymore. It's basically, once you have a fire going, whatever you throw into the fire, it will burn. It will make the flame stronger. So that's the thing. Once you have the spiritual fire in your heart, whatever life throws at you, it will just make the fire stronger. Anything you contact will burn. Anything you are in kind of contact with, or what you interact with, will be influenced by this light. And when you live from the inside out, you will be guided, right? You will know what to do. And I've talked about this also when it comes to diets. You cannot find a diet that will work permanently. And not if you grow. The thing is, when you begin to grow spiritually, you go from being biology with a tiny bit of consciousness in the brain to a consciousness-based individual with biology attached to it. And it means even your biology will change. So it's less physical and more information, vibration, and flow. And you will be more connected to life. You will be more connected to the divine flow. And that will then start cleansing you and lifting you. So your body will behave differently. Things will manifest you around you differently. Many of you, of course, you already know this because you can see in your life that the strangest things manifest, strange things happen, but to you it's normal. But it's simply because you represent a higher level of consciousness. And when that interacts with a lower level of consciousness, it will crash and it will force transformation in whatever interacts with your light. But it also means that your needs biologically will change. I talk to so many people that come to me and they experience that they go through very strange medical conditions that the doctors don't really understand. And it moves around and they can have, they can get a death sentence. The next week they're fine. It's like because the body behaves differently. It's less biology and more vibration. So your needs change. And it means also, friends, when you go through certain processes, you may need certain foods, certain nutrients. And all of a sudden, you can't eat any of that because then your vibration has changed yet again. Nothing will be permanent. You will always have to listen, always have to adjust, always have to experiment, and have the inner voice as a starting point. Is how can I work with my body to basically, tune it and sometimes restructure it. It can go through huge transformations simply because your consciousness has changed and the body needs to kind of rebuild itself. And you can use whatever. So you can use, food, modern medicine, pharmaceutical, natural treatment, whatever. Life will guide you, because the interesting thing is that in the vertical consciousness, there is less you as a person and more you as a divine being. And because of that, it's in a way, because you follow life, life will follow you, right? So whatever you are going through, life is more integrated into that because you are in tune. So your process also becomes an evolutionary process of life. Life will be more invested, more of the life flow will come through. But life will show you, life will teach you, and you can do absolutely anything. Sometimes this will work, sometimes that will work. And I've seen, so many people also, for instance, being absolutely sure that they will never, ever have any kind of pharmaceutical medicine. They only want natural things. And then they get illnesses that forces them into hospital for a year. They like stuff them full of everything. And then, I couldn't possibly survive without this. We need to be open to anything because everything is simply vibration and information, right? When we operate in a higher consciousness, we're not limited by any of this. We have a love for all of this and also the limitations. We need to have an absolute love for all of those who are part of this huge machinery, right? The whole system of manipulation and exploitation, all of that. Because you don't have to take part in it if you don't want to. And if you are, it's part of your karma. It's why you incarnated, right? And when we don't take responsibility for our own karma, we like to pass the blame. So we can point, aha, they're tricking me. And say, well, you came to the show, right? Well, knowing that this is what's going on. This is why you incarnate, because it's such a wonderful mirror of your own behaviors. This is just like a mega structure of human behavior. Why do you think you chose to be in the middle of that, being mirrored and all, you know? Yeah, so there's that. But as we wake up, we start seeing it. And we relax and we have love. Because we know that when people need that, that's what they're getting. And we know that the world cannot change until people change. And people cannot change until they transform. Right? And this is the great opportunity on this planet right now. We can actually shift gears. But it takes millions and millions of people to wake up spiritually for real. Not like fake monospirituality, but true spiritual awakening. It takes discipline, it takes practices. I will say, I really, really don't care what you believe in. Show me your practices. Right? That's the only thing that will give you credibility. Are you doing the work? Are you getting results? Are you, in fact, operating a higher level of consciousness, and what is the evidence of that? When you do the work, life will flow through you and you will have an impact on the world. But the easiest way is to assist people in finding their light within, understanding that they have to set themselves free from this machine. It doesn't mean that we should not interact with it, but make active choices. Live intentionally, right? Don't let yourself be a cash cow, right? Don't let yourself be kept in a state of absolute misery. A normal person today is miserable and sick, but it's disguised through medication and foods and snacks and entertainment and all the rest. So we can barely survive our own lives. If we took away the self-medication from a normal person, they would become suicidal. That's where we are. But it doesn't mean that you have to be.
Yes, so we have a question of, is community a solution? And specifically, you know, like smaller, more intimate communities with homeschooling, growing organic food, that sort of safety, also less dependence on the financial system, on the pensions, all that kind of thing?
It is an interesting question. I would say yes and no. Sometimes when people decide to establish or move to smaller communities, it's even more primitive. But because they're not being challenged, they don't see it. If we think of, we are here to grow, we're here to work with our karma, we're here to reach higher levels of consciousness so that we're more advanced when we leave this lifetime than we were when we incarnated. And often when we find places that, oh, this is harmony, it simply means that, yeah, you're not doing your homework. And nobody is. So it feels like harmony, and yet it's extremely primitive. And often in those communities, if something happens, they have no idea what to do with it. Then they become the worst type of monkey very quickly because they have no training in dealing with challenges, dealing with the world. So you can feel a sense of happiness from disconnection, but it's not a competent happiness. Happiness needs to be competent. And it comes from mastery. It comes from being able to be part of the world and making it work for you. Not creating the smallest life possible so you don't have to deal with things. So there's that. But if it's done with intention and say, okay, we choose to not be part of this thing, we want to study something else, that's valid. But then you also have to do that part, right? So freedom from one thing will give you the opportunity to then study something else and go into a different space. So if you do that, then we'll say, sure, absolutely. If it's simply a matter of running away from the world, then I'll say, no, that will not bring you higher consciousness.
All right, so then are we able to eat our way through this? Like, is it even possible now to have healthy organic food that really has the minerals and nutrition that you need, or are supplements kind of necessary at this point?
It's back to different strategies, right? We need different things based on where we are in our journey, where we are in our consciousness. And for some people, they can raise their consciousness and, eat junk food because it's not their karma. It's not where they have their studies. For some people, they can have a bite of a burger and they will basically fall into a coma because we have different karma, right? And it's so important that we learn to understand our own journey and our own unfoldment so we can make choices based on what will help us and what will harm us. And it's so different from each person. And what we often do, I've talked about this extensively, that we have a tendency in the spiritual communities to turn food into religion. Oh, you should not eat that. That's not pure. Well, do that. It's religion. All I care about is result. Right? Again, your belief systems are worthless. What are your practices? What are you achieving? What's the evidence? Right? We need to look at what we're doing and we can learn from each other. We should experiment, but not ever believe that there's a strategy that you can apply outside of yourself. That is the final solution. We need to experiment. We need to be open, and we need to try everything. And I've also, for instance, forced a lot of vegans to eat meat because I can see that if you are stuck in a belief system, it will weaken you. And yet, I've had meat eaters become vegan. If that's better for them, it depends on what they are studying and what they need to kind of break through whatever they're working on. Right? This is why we are all unique. You need to learn about your path, your journey, why you are here, what can bring you growth and what not, because this is also the approach we need to take when it comes to this big machine. It's only when you wake up you have choice. You're able to reflect, not based on your instincts and genetics, because that will just drive you into whatever you're sold. But you can look at yourself and say, what do I need to heal? What is actually necessary for my growth? And then you choose that. This is not something you learn in a week. It takes years. But this needs to be part of how you manage your own journey. You have to learn. Right? And sometimes, you need to go to the hospital. Sometimes you need to go to the rainforest. Sometimes you just need a burger, and it's all fine. It's just learning what is the best thing I can do for myself right now, right? And it has to come from within. There is no other way. So apply practices that assist you in, number one, finding your inner light and to switch it on and to incarnate it and to understand who you are and what you are beyond this form. Only then can you choose. Only then can you look at concrete strategies and understand how to utilize this wonderful world. Because once you set yourself free from this manipulation, it's all fun. Because now you can choose. It's all available, right? Then you can do whatever based on what you want to experience, what you want to explore, what you want to heal in yourself. Then the world is wonderful. Then you get the kind of good part of it. And next century, this is where we will be heading collectively. But for now, we need to do it on an individual basis. So yes, whatever you can do to listen, to go within, to explore, and also work with your health with more creativity, and try to, again, see this big machine and say, well, I can choose, I can control this, I just have to live intentionally. Right? I have to live with intention every moment. I have to make decisions, not just go on instinct, not on my feelings. Right? So spiritual practices and doing that inner work is the only way you can get out of this. And then it's pure fun. Then it's just, looking at the world like a zoo. You look at all of these different levels of consciousness doing what they have to do based on their biological consciousness and their karma, it's fine. But you're not trapped in it anymore. They are inside their cages and you're not. So you can choose where to go and what to interact with.
Yes, so I'm going to combine, and we'll come to a question in the audience in a minute. Combine to a comment and a question. So Sara is our resident sort of superfood and dietary guru here at IKYA Center, and she comments that I work with health and nutrition, and there are so many anti-aging products and awesome supplements, products that are available to all of us now. The problem I often see is that a lot of people don't realize their potential and settle for okay levels of health instead of great health. But we have a window, as you're talking about tonight now, where people really have great opportunities when it comes to health, and at the same time, a potential for the opposite, because there's so much, distraction and self-medication. It takes work informing oneself, making conscious choices. I mean, she asked the questions, but is it enough to make people more conscious about these things? And the irony that another person asks is because a lot of the things that we think are better choices, like essential oils, herbs, superfoods, juicing, crystals, like a lot of these things are made and sold by the very same companies who are making the poisons and the medicines and all. I mean, the supplement industry is a great example. A lot of their supplements are often like leftover stuff from making medications. So how, just raising our consciousness, how is it enough? Can we really negotiate this huge machine?
Let's start with a kind of last point here. Yes, when you raise your consciousness, you see everything. That's one of the great benefits of raising your consciousness, even in this form, is that you do get the overview. You do get to see connections that you couldn't see. It's just like going from really, really stupid to really, really intelligent. It's that same kind of migration. It's impossible to understand what you see as an intelligent person if you have a low IQ. It's the same thing. It's not possible to understand higher consciousness if you're in a low consciousness. But you can see how things work. You can see how nature moves. You can see over timelines, you can see unfoldments, you can see how to place yourself, and life will guide you, and it will just be very accessible and visible. Absolutely, you can then be on the outside of it and having fun with it and make your choices, because you will not be controlled anymore. Right? The thing is, power is someone submitting. We have the story that power is someone forcing you, but power is the act of submitting to someone and then giving away your authority. And when we think of it that way, because that's what it truly is, because if nobody submits, there is no power, right? So once we stop doing that, there's no power. It still means that we live in this society, but then all of a sudden we see other opportunities and other ways to move. And we say, well, I have the freedom. Sure, I don't have to go to the grocery store and buy shit every day. I can buy healthy food. I can also buy food I love. I can learn how to cook better. I can take better care of myself. I can detox. I can do all of these things. So, yes, a higher consciousness changes everything. Absolutely everything. It cannot be overestimated. It's not possible. Your insight into yourself and the world transforms into something completely different. You can see through it, and you can see what things are for real. And then you can play with it. So life becomes a lab and a playground, and it's just wonderful. And you're not stopped because you do not operate on that level of karma anymore. So when people are trapped still in what we call the sleeping state, meaning that the vertical consciousness is not yet woken up, meaning that they operate on a biological consciousness, they need help. They can't get out of it themselves, and maybe they're not supposed to yet. But you can also see sometimes that there are people that, they just need a push in the right direction. You can see that they are kind of not in deep sleep. They're starting to connect the dots. They're starting to, there's somebody home almost. They just need an elbow to wake up, right? And it's that. Because we incarnate based on our karma and what we need. So nothing that happens can ever be wrong. Right? And you can be in a low-level consciousness, and it will still then evolve you. It will be slower. But when you are in the process of awakening, you also need to take the responsibility to not behave as if you're sleeping anymore. Because that is the whole point of it, that you can set yourself free. You have other opportunities, and you need to learn a different behavior. Because what is natural human behavior is not natural spiritual behavior. Right? And that is something we need to learn. It's not part of the human genome at all. So learning to live intentionally, learning to be kind of switched on, to truly observe, because it's only when you truly observe that you can also change them, right? And that takes presence. Now, like one thing about presence and spiritual presence is the ability to truly be here, for instance. That does not mean that you will be doing everything yourself. It's not like you have to grow your own vegetables to be present. But being present also means that you are in harmony. You have less resistance, otherwise you can't land. Right? When you are in resistance, you are either in yourself or somewhere else. You're not here. So when you let go of resistance, you become more present in the real world. And it also means that you accept how the world works. You accept everything. So that state of presence will also expand your space. It also enables life to flow through you. And as I explained, it means that you will become an extension of life much more. So you will be kind of breathing life, and you can see that people are being influenced by you, not through power, but through you as both an amplifier, as a channeling point, and as someone who transforms. So that even means that sometimes you can get an illness so that the people at the hospital will have an opportunity to interact with you. This happens a lot. People coming to me all the time with these types of experiences, so we can see that, this is not yours. It's basically not about you. It's about you being in service for all these people. So often then there will be a lot of weird things happening because kind of your presence in it will vibrate in such a way that their weaknesses will come to the surface. So your job is to be a spiritual mirror so they can improve, so they can grow in what they are doing. This is also part of what happens when you grow up spiritually. It's not all about you anymore. And life will just flow through you, which means also that life will show you how to take care of yourself. And life will take care of you, because life will always take care of its own channels. Because you're not in the way anymore. You're one that kind of brings life. You're part of the endless, ongoing creation in the universe. And when you're part of that, it will also flow through, meaning that you will be calibrated, you will be tuned, and also the manifestation will align in such a way that you will be also maintained and healed and taken care of. Not necessarily in the way you think as a person that you need, but you can see that life will just like over there now, right? And then you will go over there now because you're an agent for life, not just the self anymore. So that will also happen, right? So the whole issue around like health and balance in so many different ways, it's all that humans really do, right? But in so many different ways. And it's for you also to kind of pull yourself out of that lower consciousness game and understand that you can use it to your advantage. But you have to accept, you have to love, you have to let people do what they incarnated to do, which is being part of that. And don't try to change it. Change yourself so you can vibrate higher consciousness so that you may channel. Because that is the only thing that can truly change this planet. Right? And then you need to take care of yourself.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, it turned into more a comment. I find it so fascinating, the concept of being normal. It's normal to be sick, it's normal to do that, and that makes us also fall asleep instead of being curious of raising the consciousness in that moment, what am I in contact with? So you actually answered by the last question. Thank you.
Right. Yes, but it's always back to that. We need to let our bodies in our life be a reflection of the inner light, of what we're channeling. And we learn then to, when we want to let the flow through, we can go, oh, I need to change that, I need to change that. Sometimes it's manifestation in our lives. Sometimes we need to reinvent our entire lives. Sometimes we need to do things medically. Sometimes there will be manifestations in our bodies because the flow has changed and the body has to kind of move with it. It's just how things are. But back to also what Sarah mentioned is that people are not ambitious enough. We're so used to now that we should all be miserable and just get by through self-medication. Nobody knows what true happiness is anymore. We get happy when we do this. I get happy when I get that thing, you know, and it's always connected to something outside of us that we have to do as a ritual. But true happiness is constant, it's permanent, it's a level of consciousness. It's what happens when you are in alignment. When, to put it simply, when consciousness and mind and emotions and body and life, when they're vibrating the same, that will force the brain to produce happiness. And this is traditionally what happiness is. Because then we don't have to do anything. It's a state. And then everything becomes happy. You know, when we do that, well, that's a happy thing because we're happy when doing it. And this is also what shifts. And so when we go from living from the outside in to inside out, is like when we try to support ourselves, balance ourselves through the world, we're looking for this thing and that thing and this thing and that, and it will never last. And we'll never get happy truly. But when we connect and we are able to start waking up and that flow comes, it will fill whatever we do. So everything we do will become an exercise in kind of manifesting our consciousness. So when you are in a state, for instance, of happiness, whatever you do becomes happy. It will carry that vibration. It will have that impact on other people. It can be healing, it can be this, that, but whatever is your state, you will manifest it. You will not be looking for it outside of yourself, because this is the biggest illusion of this civilization, is that we can find what we seek outside of ourselves. Nobody has ever been able to do that. It's never worked for anyone. We just become more miserable. And because in our civilization, people are more disconnected from their kind of inner flow than ever, then people get extremely sad and depressed and desperate, which sells more products. So, but it's also important that you do understand that a lot of the things that are sold to you and are sold to normal people contain chemicals, and they're completely aware of how it works. That will pull people down. So yes, sometimes organic food can help. I would say that you know, for most people, when we look at what strategies to choose, I would say like one simple thing: make all food from scratch. It's the only way you can make sure that you don't get a lot of chemicals. Yes, there's chemicals and microplastics in everything, but at least still making food from scratch, that is the best health strategy you can have. And then, sure, organic, if you feel drawn to it, that normally will contain more nutrients and less of the other stuff. So just doing that in itself, because ultra-processed foods are definitely very, very harmful. So it's just, you know, simple things like that. And try to buy more natural products. The thing is, back to how our tribal brain works, that we want to trust big companies because we want to be part of the winning team. But often you find more trustworthy products with smaller companies, right? Where there are people who started because they wanted to do better. People don't buy those products normally. And if they buy them, they will be bought up by a bigger company. Often, but before they're bought up by a bigger company, they have great products. So support smaller companies with the, like, that carries the intention of bringing something better to the world. Try to look for it, right? And address your feelings. Address whatever is going on inside of you. Heal your wounds, all that, because that will make you want less crap. It will make you less of a pushover. It will be more difficult to manipulate you because all products are sold to you as healing. Healing your wounds, healing your emotions, making you popular, like making your life better. If your life is already healed and better, you don't need all of that. So you'll be able to more easily set yourself free. So deal with yourself. Go to therapy. Like, do whatever is necessary, but please deal with whatever baggage you're carrying around, because that will make you, if you don't, you will self-medicate. It's also very, very simple. Another thing, educate yourself. As I said, we live in a time right now where we've left everything to the stupid people. Wherever you look, there are stupid people. Stupid people in politics, stupid people like in the media. It's just like everywhere. Educate yourself. And that means go beyond, you know, social media. Read books, follow scientists, find credible sources, and stay with them over time. Try to learn, go kind of beyond and beneath the surface. Try to be thorough. Because the typical thing today is people hear something on social media and then they create this whole story, and this is how it is, right? So, critical thinking. If you don't understand the rules of critical thinking, Google it, you know? Critical thinking is extremely important because it has completely disappeared from our educational system. And in general, we need to be more critical of sources. We need to be more thorough in both where and how we process information. And one thing that's very clear with AI, it will be fun to see how this happens, because with AI, the amount of false information will quadruple in a very short time. And it means that you will not be able to trust anything because everything will look real. And it's not. So you can't trust. So books will become popular again. You will need more static sources because you will not be able to trust anything. So you will need to find your sources, and that will become popular. This will take another decade or so, but try to start now. Learn critical thinking, learn to process information, and educate yourself. Educate yourself if you have health issues. Don't trust your doctor. Why should you? He's a provider, he has a job. It's your responsibility. This is, as I said, like once you begin the process of waking up spiritually, you have the responsibility. Because you have the freedom to choose. You actually have the freedom. You should make educated choices, which means you have to educate yourself. If you have a medical condition, read up. Figure things out. Become an expert. Become someone that can have a fruitful discussion with a healthcare professional. Don't leave it to them, because it's also your journey. It's not, they have their journey, but it's your body. It's your journey. It's your responsibility. So learn to take more responsibility. And this is, as I said, the worst part. Humans hate responsibility. They always see freedom as freedom from responsibility. Well, I say true freedom is responsibility. It's basically how much responsibility you're willing to take and able to take, because that is what gives you freedom, because then you have the ability to choose and to be intentional and build the results you want. That's freedom. So you need to learn this, and don't subscribe to the bullshit that the society is teaching you through this big machine, that you should just go around and consume and be miserable. Wake up, because you can. But it takes discipline, it takes practices, it takes real changes, and also changing your habits. Right? Look at, we've talked about self-medication in other episodes, but look at your whole self-medication strategies and do better. You can. It's not like you have to suffer and then self-medicate. You can kind of break that kind of vicious cycle. And one thing also, which is like really important, of course, is detox. As I always say that, yes, our bodies are self-cleaning, but to a certain point. And our civilization, we're doing everything we can to make it as hard as possible for our bodies by stuffing ourselves with everything that will make us sick. So detox, cleansing, juicing, fasting, all of that, you should have that as part of your strategies. It will also help you have a clearer mind. And we need to have clearer minds to be able to make better decisions for ourselves, also health-wise. Because when you detox and when you fast and have these strategies, you will connect more to your body, and the natural signals from your cells will reach you. When you have detoxed enough, and when you work with your body, you can start hearing your organs. You can sense what's going on in your cells. And you will know what you need and what to eat and what not to eat. Your intuition will be very in tune. This is natural. Right? When you even look at, one has seen that apes, there are like more apes than one, believed of course, that are using medical herbs. How do they know? Well, it's this, right? We're so far away from a natural state because that's how money is made. So when we are in a natural, healthy state, we know what we need. And it's not self-medication. It's your job to bring you there. So, and of course, exercise. Whatever you do, exercise. It doesn't matter what it is, but your body is meant for movement. So that's also a very simple health strategy. It will make everything better, and all science agrees on this. And also, yes, most people today would need supplements, but educate yourself. There's so much bullshit out there. And yes, a lot of it is from the pharmaceutical industry because they want to control that part of it. But figure out what you actually need. And there are a lot of really good supplements as well, but understand what it is you need. And of course, be with people you love, and also love the people you're with. It's very simple, but humans are social animals. We have survived as a life form together by collaborating, by being there for each other, by helping each other, by loving each other. And I've talked about this before, but one has tried to, in our civilization, both to kind of break up the family and make people feel they should be alone because there is more money in it. People consume more when they are by themselves because, you know, you need 2 houses, you need 2 cars, you need 2 of everything instead of having 1 home. It's very cynical, but there is more money in making people single also because you know that you're more depressed and miserable, so you consume more. And this is a strategy. So, be with people you love, have relationships, form families, focus on the type of life and the good lives that people have been enjoying for thousands of years. But do it your own way, but understand that being single and miserable is part of the machine. Not everyone wants to be in relationships, but all science supports that that is better. You have also better health when you are in loving relationships. But it could also be, you know, loving your friends, but have people in your life. And also learn to love the people that you have in your life instead of criticizing them. You know, we have to learn to stop criticizing and being so negative because that's just the consumer suffering, forcing us to buy more shit. So focus on that. It's a part of spiritual practices that is often overlooked. But being in loving relationships and loving people, letting them love you is extremely beneficial, also health-wise. So be with people you love and love people you're with. And, of course, spiritual exercises, spiritual practices, no matter what it is, you need to center, you need to go in such a way that you set yourself free from the biological consciousness. It's necessary. It's where it all starts. And you need daily spiritual practices until you get there. And then you want to have daily spiritual exercises because then it's the most wonderful thing. But that as a discipline, there is no other way out of this. There's no way today to have great health. And with that I mean not that you're symptom-free, but that you have true health and balance in all levels without rigorous spiritual practices, without your dedication to them, without your dedication to love, and to kind of greater health and balance both in yourself and in the world. You have to go in, you have to go up, you have to connect with what you're outside, and then learn to transform your life and your body to a vehicle for that journey. For as long as you try to find truth outside of yourself, you will not find it because it's impossible. It's an echo. It's an echo of your own voice mixed together with whatever else people are doing. But you cannot find truth outside of you. You cannot find what balances you outside of you. It's all inside of you already. And it's waking up, hopefully. It may be slow, it may be fast, but please wake up. This planet has great potential. And we all have great potential. That's kind of the, in a way, sometimes the sad part when you look at humans and looking at what humans could be and what humans could achieve even now if they were only able to wake up. The world will change when humans change. And it's one person at a time. So the only way to heal the world is by healing yourself. The only way to lift the consciousness on the planet is by lifting your own consciousness first. The only way you're going to see more love in the world is by you filling yourself with love and loving people first. It's always you. You are the solution. This is why freedom and responsibility is the same thing. And your daily practice is your dedication to fostering and nurturing your own growth, your own unfoldment, your own consciousness, and your own spiritual advancement. It's the only investment worth doing. And that will have a greater impact on the world than anything you could possibly do. Because then that light will emanate from you, it will be channeled, and it will influence everyone around you. But in addition, as we talked about, talk with people, assist them in understanding that they have to go within, that they have to start that spiritual awakening process. It's the only thing that will make them connect with their path, the only thing that will make them understand why they're here and what to do and how to heal. The outer world will make less and less sense for people. People will become more desperate, more depressed, more scared. But once you go within, it does not affect you anymore. You will just see the beauty and the wonder of this world, and you will see all the opportunities that you can use to then co-create and expand yourself and create even more love and healing. So one person's nightmare will be another person's heaven. It will be the same place, but it's all about the changing consciousness. And this is also going to be your choice. It has to be intentional. It will not just happen by itself. So do the work. Take care of your own health on all levels. As I deal with the past, cleanse, become a vehicle, open up, wake up. Let other people be. Focus everything on your own awakening. Understand that when that happens, it's like a nuclear explosion. You're that one particle with that much impact. It's very simple. Bringing the world forward to where it needs to go will be the result of this. Yes, there is more spiritual awakening on this planet. There are more people interested in finding different pathways. And hopefully, now it's your turn. Take a step back. Move to a higher level. And make the decision to live from the inside out. To truly set yourself free. And through that, over time, we will all set the world free.
Thank you, IKYA. Thank you all for joining us for IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. And we have gotten a clarion call for action. Your health, my health, it's in our hands, also the health of the world. So let's get out there and see if we can't assist each other in lifting our consciousness and healing our planet. And until next time, we are also off next Monday, so we'll see you in 2 weeks for IKYA Live. And until then, we wish you well and happy spring or autumn if you're in the southern hemisphere, and enjoy those northern and southern lights. Okay, see you soon.